listening to The Breakfast Show on Faith FM with Skafy and Lindsay and producer Chelsea. And we are now going to get into a new quiz question. And after the quiz question, we're going to tell you what is to come in our program. So please, producer Chelsea.
Okay, so our next one is, which two books of the Bible begin with a blessing? So which two books of the Bible, New and Old Testament can be, which two books of the Bible begin with a blessing? And you guys can text into to 0491 064669. Would love to have you join along with us. And the hosts right now are looking at me. So
what was the question again, Chelsea?
Beat them if you try. The question is, which two books of the Bible begin with a blessing?
Begin with a blessing. Two books of the Bible. I know one. I know two.
Okay.
Okay,
well,
I got
that's a good
this
start
one.
then.
Yeah, all right. All right, Lindsay.
Yeah. Skafy's got it. Come on, Lindsay. Just have a guess.
Did you see the reflection of
I
my
saw
answer
in the reflection
mirror?
you've got one that I already wrote, but I didn't see the other one very well.
You guys have learned how to cheat. That's so terrible.
Don't say you guys. Say you girl. I'm not cheating.
Yeah, he can't cheat from mine because I don't have, a computer that's going to luminously reflect.
Okay, so it's the computer that
Yeah.
reflects.
Oh, man. All right, I've got this one.
Yeah, so pick another one.
I'll think about it.
Okay, just say what the question and the number once again, producer Shells, while Lindsay's trying to get her answer.
Which two books of the Bible begin with a blessing? So they start out blessing. And our text line is 0491 064669.
Okay. Now, all right, Lindsay. Once we say the answer, you're gonna say, "Oh no, I cannot believe it! It's so obvious." But while we get there, tell us a little bit about what you're going to be talking about today.
Okay, yeah. Let me tell you my stories.
Not quite. Just tell what it's going to be, and then I'm going to tell and then we're going to get into your story.
Okay.
Just to give us a preview.
Okay, preview. So today I'm going to be talking about Forrest Frank and some of the stuff that has happened in his life in the past, probably year, I think it's been. And yeah, he's had some altercations with people online. Actually, they've had altercations with him. He's been a very nice guy. So we'll get more into that later.
I'm going to be talking about some updates of the Artemis 2 mission, space mission that's taking, just today, took us further, took any human being,
how far have they gone?
As far as 252,000 miles.
I don't know what that means.
It's a lot.
A lot, okay.
Yeah,
cool.
It is a lot. Taking them further from what any human being in history has ever ventured themselves into.
So they've gone past the moon then?
Yes. But I'll say that this is actually a disputed claim.
Sure. Okay.
Disputed. But I'll explain to you why.
Into it more later?
Yeah, we will get into it more about it later. We're also going to have an interview today with Dr. John Anderson. And Dr. John, he's going to be sharing with us, about the truth of the Genesis history and the time frame of Genesis, particularly highlighting the collapse of coastal structures around the world, the memories of Noah, of Noah's flood amongst tribal groups before any encounters with missionaries.
Oh, wow.
Did you know that there were like a bunch of tribal groups scattered throughout the entire world that knew the story of the Ark of Noah?
Yeah.
Even though nobody has ever told them that story.
Yeah.
How did they get to know that story? You're going to find out today in our interview at 7:35 a.m. So, and before we get into your Forrest Frank story, Lindsay, let's see if we have any messages here. We got a message from Melanie. She says, "Hey, good morning, Lindsay. Some of us are still traumatized from that time in Melbourne. I don't think many really understand. We go through it at the time. We got through it at the time, but left some emotional scars for sure. I know you have mentioned it a few times on air, so I understand it has affected you deeply. And I think some from other states just would never understand. It really affected me. I am still not working. You sound like you are in a really good place now. Praise God."
Yeah. Hey, thanks for that message, Melanie. I appreciate it. I'm so sorry to hear that it's affected you to this point, but I thought I would share, I guess, the journey that God has taken me on in all of that. So prior to Melbourne lockdown starting in 2020, I only moved to Melbourne in 2019. And you know what? I had no desire to move there whatsoever.
So what brought you there?
God did.
Work?
Specifically. So I had a year left of my degree to study to be a school chaplain. And I basically was invited to work in a school in Melbourne a year before I graduated. I had not even applied for the job. Somebody met me, was like, you'd be the perfect person for this job that doesn't exist yet. I'm going to tell the principal at my school, we're going to make the job, you're going to be in it. And I was like, oh, okay. And that's exactly what happened. And I did the interviews. I was like, I don't really want to do this. But God was like, oh, what's wrong with just doing an interview? You know, I was like, okay. So I did the interview. They offered me the job. I moved down there. I was like, God, if you open this door, I will walk through it. I will follow you wherever you lead me. But I never knew anybody in Melbourne. I'd never been there before. I'm from Queensland. I like the sunshine. I grew up in a family where my dad told me that, you know, Melbourne's not, Victoria's not even part of Australia. It's just sort of that mentality way up north. And so I was like, I have no desire to go there whatsoever. I have nothing there for me.
So God brought you to Melbourne. And
God wanted me in Melbourne.
And how did you overcome that, those Melbourne COVID traumas?
Look, I went through the worst time of my entire life there. Every second of the day, I hated being there. But it was also I feel like God wanted me there so that I would face a lot of the issues in my life that I'd managed to run away from up until that point. This was a time for me and God to just sit in a room together for hours on end, and for me to run out of things to scroll on YouTube and watch, and eventually just face God and talk to him about my issues, right? And so I really ended up leaning into that experience. And like I said earlier in today's show, God told me go outside for a walk, and so often I would start going outside for a walk and being outside in the fresh air, and then I would do journaling and I would do poetry and I would spend time just unpacking all of the things that was in my heart deep down inside that I had just ignored up until that point. And thankfully, in my time in Melbourne, I moved around a few times in about the less than 3 years that I was there. I ended up in a really dodgy part of town during the worst part of lockdown. And it was such a dodgy part of town that police didn't even roam the area. And so I did happen to go outside for longer than my one allotted hour per day of exercise.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit longer. And I would go down to the river the park by the river, and I would lie in the grass with my socks off, and I would get some grounding. I would have some light in my eyes. Even if it was a cloudy day, I would have more sunshine. And I would just spend heaps of time outside in nature, just to do something and just to try to get some of that blue and green.
Let me tell you, this 1 hour a day exercising, that was to me the worst part of the whole COVID response. And to be honest, 1 hour, how people spending 2 hours, for example, would increase their risks of, anyway, I think this probably was the worst policy ever.
Yeah. So I
hope it never comes back.
I did everything I could possibly do. I went to therapy. I had counseling. I managed to find one or two friends, and even though they weren't the most healthy of friendships, I did what I could in order to stay in touch with people who were out of state. And my mum would come and find me on occasion because she had moved to Melbourne at around that same time, but we were in different areas of Melbourne. We couldn't even see each other. And so I did everything I possibly could to look after myself with the knowledge that I had. And I have a lot of knowledge around mental health and well-being, obviously as a school chaplain, I'd studied that. And so I lent into every piece of information that I possibly had available to me. And I think that's still possible for people who are still experiencing the after effects of this. There is so much help and strategies available that we can lean into, whether it is counseling, whether it is nutrition, whether it's being outside in sunshine and nature, or maintaining healthy relationships. You don't have to stay stuck in the place that you once were. And I know being in the physical proximity of Melbourne, I don't really like going back to Melbourne because it's a bit triggering. And I can't imagine living there still to this day. But yeah, there are certainly things that can make it a lot better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, I'll tell you what I did, because when the COVID trigger hit it, we couldn't leave the house. Actually, I was in the first cohort that returned. I was actually in Fiji with my wife. We're doing some mission work there, and when we came back to Australia, I was among the first cohorts that had to do mandatory home quarantine.
Oh, really?
For 2 weeks? Yeah,
Yeah.
that before the generalized lockdown. And what saved me at the time, like, because we had just young kids, and what helped me a lot was I had bought at Bunnings, and I never seen them there ever since, these inflatable jumping castles.
Okay.
And it was heavily discounted. I think it was initially like $1,000. I bought it for like $200.
Right.
And I said, it's be great. And I had at the time I was living in a house, renting a house with a relatively large backyard.
Yeah.
So jumping on that thing for like hours and hours every day, that was my physical exercise.
Fair
that
enough.
was my, So I really got my value out of that
Wow.
jumping castle. Was every day in, day out,
Has
that
it
thing
died
was
yet?
inflated. Oh yeah, it died. But it served its mission with
That's
people. Actually,
good.
I think I sold it. I passed it on
Oh,
to
okay.
someone else, but that was my physical exercise.
You got to do what you got to do, whether
Yeah.
it's jumping up and down. Like, I would even go outside and walk in nature at certain times during lockdown and just go mushroom hunting. Like, I got an app on my phone that helped identify mushrooms, because there's heaps of mushrooms around Melbourne.
I
It's
don't
like a
know
very
if I would
cool.
trust
I
that.
didn't I only picked mushrooms that I had a person help me identify them, and I was very, very clear about this is a type of mushroom that I can clearly identify, and I can pick that one. But all the other ones, I would just like look at them and like, hey, that's a cool looking mushroom. I wonder what that is. And I would just go looking in the forest for different things, like near my house, like the little nature reserves around the place. And
Okay.
yeah. So like, I would just do whatever I could think of to be creative, to get myself outdoors.
No worries. Look, just in case if you ever get into that mushroom hunting hobby again, and you're feeling like doing some beef Wellingtons, don't invite me. Just in case.
I hated mushrooms before I went to Melbourne entirely. So.
All right. Well, speaking of being active, Lindsay, thanks for sharing your testimony. I think that's really important. And as you mentioned that there's one of the elements to help us overcome, depression and overcome even the traumas that we had is just to spend time outdoors. And for a lot of people, this is a real struggle, to start from nothing into something.
You're listening to the Breakfast Show podcast on Faith FM. Positively different.
Now it is time for Shelzy Belzy to give us a quiz answer.
Come on, Chelsea. What's the next quiz? What is the answer to the quiz?
I need to create more buttons. I find
Yeah.
buttons
Yes.
are fun. So did we give the answer? We need the answer first, don't we?
Yeah.
Okay, so the two books. Did you work out from other people answering yet?
I didn't. I just got Revelation
So it was Revelation and Psalms.
and Psalms.
Yes.
I did think of Psalms for a second, and then I kept moving
Blessed is
on.
the man who meditates in the word of God day and night.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. He'll be
Okay.
like a tree planted by the
That's true.
by the streams of water.
Ugh,
Yeah.
mate. Yeah, I remember with Revelation, blessed is the person who like reads this book.
Yeah. Oh, I think this actually starts. Blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked.
Yeah, the ungodly.
Yeah, on the ungodly
Yeah.
and so on.
Yeah.
But meditates on the law of God day
Does
and
not
night.
sit in the seat of sinners or something, and
That's right, that's
things
the one.
and stuff.
So Lincoln has received the hardcover copy of Lindsay's book, Journal Overflow.
Really?
And he gave it to friends whose daughter, it was a present for their daughter.
Oh wow,
Wow,
that's
there you
amazing.
go. Fantastic, Lincoln. I
Oh,
think I
thank
hope that
you.
she really enjoys it.
Oh, thanks for supporting. Oh,
There you go.
that's so nice. I saw someone bought one in Germany the other day. I was like, that's
Oh,
so
really?
random, but
In
okay.
Germany, yeah.
Cool. Oh, wow.
Right. I want to talk to you about space travel today.
All right, tell me.
Because I
like
think
space.
we have the most exciting things happening on the space field like for over half a century. By the way, just before we start, do you know how many times we have landed on the moon as humanity?
Like with people stepping on it, or with like probes?
No,
stepping on
with
it?
people.
Apparently the one time.
No.
No?
I thought it was just the one time as well.
Two. Russia.
No,
I don't know.
6 times.
Six whole times?
6 whole times. There's 12 different astronauts.
What?
That set foot.
Mate.
Yeah. We had like Apollo 11, Apollo 12, then Apollo 13 didn't make it. They had a problem with the oxygen tank, and they had to kind of go back to the Earth, but they survived. Then we had Apollo 14, Apollo 15, Apollo 17.
Why are they all called Apollo?
Well, that's the name that they gave.
Alrighty.
Yeah, Apollo is the god of the sun god. Yeah.
Interesting.
So I think, exploring the universe kind of vibes.
Alrighty.
So I thought we only been there, but actually the last time we've been there was Apollo 17 touchdown in 1972.
Rightio.
So after years of anticipation and technical hurdles, this bold new test flight has launched perfectly on April 1st, 2026. So
50 years later.
Yeah. About 50 years, a little bit more, 54.
54 years later.
Yeah, after more than 50 years. And right now, 4 astronauts are circling deep into the Orion spacecraft, testing the systems that will one day put boots back on the lunar surface. It's not landing yet, but it's the critical dress rehearsal for a sustainable human exploration beyond Earth orbit. Basically, they're doing a test drive.
Okay.
In the spacecraft to see if everything's working, toilet is working, air conditioning is working, navigation systems is working.
Yeah.
It's actually a very cramped down space, very tiny, but you can see they're filming it like everything. You can Google and you can see them, doing their things and eating their food and cleaning themselves up with like kind of a wet towel,
wet wipes.
Yeah, wet wipes. And they even have a proper toilet with a door, everything, and they needed to because they have a lady with them. This is the first time actually that a woman is going to the moon or being moon bound.
Yeah.
The first time. So there's a bunch of historical things. There's the first black person as well. So the pilot. We're going to talk a bit more about him as well. The first non-American to go as well, because one of the crew members is a Canadian guy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So they're breaking a bunch of records, and one of the records that they've broken is that this is the time where a human being has been further away from home on some kind of space travel. I just dispute that from a biblical perspective, because I think that there are other human beings way, way further from home than them, aka Moses, Enoch, and Elijah.
Oh, fair.
The 3 guys the Bible says, resurrected. And now if you count Jesus, in this picture as well.
I guess.
The Apostle Paul, he didn't know if he was in God's planet in the body or out of the body, like in vision. He doesn't know, so we're not going to count him.
Sure. Yeah.
But God has taken Elijah and Enoch and Moses. So technically, these were the human beings who have traveled furthest from home.
Hey, look, you don't need to get in a rocket ship to do some space travel, according to the Bible.
Yeah, that's right. But that being said, I think it's very exciting. And I actually saw it. I was actually quite emotional when I was seeing it, because just like think, we can, as human beings, we can do some incredible things. Incredible things. And I think that in the current world that we're living, we're always having like bad news. And whenever the word rocket is applied to, we're seeing like, ballistic missiles and people exploding others. And so, what? Thinking that we can use that same amount of technology to explore other planets, I think it's great. Actually, I'm going to tell you, because I think that this is one of the things that we will be doing the most when Jesus comes back, and we're going to spend eternity. I think that space travel is going to be a thing.
Hey, I'm going to invite you, Skafy. You're going to come with me to Pluto. We can have an ice cream party.
Yeah, 100%. I'll tell you one thing. I was talking to a friend of mine this weekend, and one thing that I'm going to love about heaven is that in heaven, in eternity, everybody will be best friends with everybody, because everybody will spend infinite amount of time with everybody.
Yeah.
So Chelsea, we can say, Chelsea, get your family, get my family. We're going to spend like 50 years touring for some, planet together. And even if we don't see each other again for, I don't know, another 1,000 years, when we see them again for 200 years, well, it adds up over an infinite amount of years. So what makes it believe is that every single human being that has ever existed, you're going to be absolute best friends with them. You're going to spend infinite amount of time with them. That's what how awesome eternity is.
Wow.
Not only from people that are presently living, but, Lindsay, you're going to be besties with like Abraham. Isaac and Jacob.
You know what? This
and
has
Sarah.
always been my dream. When I first came to university 12 years ago, I was like looking around at all these people I'd never met before. I was like, I want to be friends with every single person here. I didn't quite get to that. But I became friends with a lot of people. And now people think that I know everybody because I travel around Australia a lot. And I'm like, look, I don't know everybody, but I do try. And so this has been my dream forever, is to like be friends with literally everybody.
Absolutely. So that's going to be something that I'm looking forward to. And I think that part of what we're going to be doing are these kinds of things, like
you
space
and me,
travels.
We're going to lead the charge of being friends with everyone.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Okay, going back to the mission here.
Sure.
On day 2, it was a big one because their translunar injection burn fired Orion's main engine. Because the Orion is relatively small, maybe the size of 2 cargo vans.
Okay.
And that's the spaceship. And what they've done is something that I find absolutely fascinating. They had slingshotted out of Earth's orbit towards the moon. So they're using the gravitational rotation and field of the Earth and the moon to kind of a slingshot them and give them a boost. This is one of the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
This is the maneuver that Apollo 13 famously used to be able to go back to the Earth when one of their oxygen tanks went bust. Mm-hmm. I find this absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, look
So
how
cool.
far we've come into the understanding of how God's celestial bodies work.
Yeah.
Then over days, the first few days. So basically, they were a couple of days circling around the Earth. Now they already reached the far side of the moon, and now they're coming back. So it's a 10 days trip total. It's not a super long one.
So this is just a flyby trip. This
Flyby.
is not a landing trip.
But this is what they're saying. This time, they're not just going to step foot on the moon. They're planning so that they're going to stay. You're going to go to the moon to stay. So the idea is that they're going to be putting on moving in some nuclear reactors, and basically going to be building a small village, city in the moon, in the far side of the moon. I think it's because they don't want anybody prying on them with telescopes.
Oh, fair enough.
Probably the conspiracy theories are going to say that's equally because it doesn't exist. So how we're going to know? But that's the plan, that they're going to be putting on some bases, like permanent human bases on the moon,
When
like we
are
have in
they
Antarctica, for example.
Of doing that?
Before the Brisbane Olympics, by 2032.
That's not long.
No. And one of the reasons, before they had some plans to do that like by 2050 or something, but then China came in and they said, hey, by the way, we are going to be putting bases on the moon before 2030 something. And then the United States says, by the way, we are also accelerating all of our plans. And before the next Brisbane Olympics, we are also going to have our bases in the moon. So nothing like good old-fashioned Cold War style competition among nations.
That's what you want.
Yeah. So they are already coming back home. One of the things that I saw that I like, because two of these astronauts are openly Christians. This is Commander Reed Wiseman and the pilot, Victor Glover. Victor Glover, the pilot, he's a devout Church of Christ member and also a former Sunday school teacher, and he has been very vocal about his beliefs. And this is one of the things he says during the Easter message. He says, look, I haven't prepared anything, but I'm paraphrasing him. He says, look, I haven't prepared anything for the Easter message, but you know what? As we are hearing this capture, you're thinking that we are privileged. And we are in some degree. We are privileged of being, in this spaceship, seeing the Earth and going to the moon. But I'll tell you, as I'm looking into the Earth, the privileged are you. Have you noticed how God has created this massive space traveling planet that has everything that you need to survive and to thrive? Beautiful, sources of water, animals, and so on. This is the real miracle, not the spaceship that we're flying on.
Yeah.
So props to this guy. I think that was amazing.
Yeah.
And he was talking, he was giving the glory to God. He was talking about the beauty of creation. And it was very beautiful. So all of these astronauts have some interesting stories. The commander, Reed Wiseman, he has a bit of a tragic story. He lost his wife for cancer. She was battling with cancer for 5 years.
No.
And she died very young. She was 46 years old. And he wanted to give up on being an astronaut. And his wife said, no, you're not doing that.
Mm-hmm. You got to live your dreams, boy.
You got to live your dreams. There's a lot of people counting on you.
Yeah.
So him being a single dad with 2 teenage girls, imagine he had that, he said that he had that very difficult conversation to the girls. Says, girls, if dad does not come back home, this is what you do.
Right.
You know, because he's probably one of the riskiest things you can do.
No, that's fair.
Sitting, being propelled by 2 rockets that, have the same amount of energy than a nuclear bomb, basically.
Yeah.
Propelled into the deep space.
They've already lost one parent. They could easily lose a second, and he's very aware of that.
And he did. And then the girl that's there, her name is Christina Koch. And she's the record holder of the woman that spent the longest amount of time in space, 328 days.
Wow.
That's
been
legit.
On the space station or something?
Yeah, in the space station
Okay.
between 2019 and 2020. So she's no stranger to the space environment.
Okay.
So it's quite a fascinating crew. How amazing would it be to be with the 3 of your best mates in a spaceship, just circulating the moon and coming back? I do not know about you, but that thing gets me excited.
Look, Skafy, I don't know if you and I could sit in the same little box for 10 days straight.
I mean, if we had producer Chelsea with us, she can give us quiz questions 1 per hour to keep us entertained. What about you, radio friend? Would you take that opportunity to go to the moon and study, and live in the base there?
You're listening to the Breakfast Show podcast on Faith FM. Positively
Before
different.
we get into our interview, Stuart sent us a message saying it would drive me nuts. I think he's talking about going to the moon.
I think he's talking about being in a box with you for 10 days.
Yeah, maybe. That might be the case. But look, I think I would be so happy. I mean, 10 days, free trip. You can push all the buttons you want in that space craft.
Oh,
you
man.
can eat dehydrated food. I mean, what is not to love?
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Speaking of which, I actually want to talk to Dr. John Anderson. He's joining us again today, and he's going to be sharing with us about the truthfulness or the veracity of the book of Genesis. Is Genesis actual history, or is the book of Genesis filled with myths? Well, Dr. John is going to help us look into some of the evidence to see where we can land. So, Dr. John, thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's great to have you here.
Oh, we're not getting him through quite yet. We'll just wait for him to be able to speak.
So, in the meantime here, yes, Producer Shells is trying to reconnect us with Dr. John. Dr. John, do we have you with us?
Nope, not yet.
Yeah, okay. We're going to wait for Producer Shell to get him in. In the meantime, let's see here if we have any other quiz questions.
Oh, we have some more comments that have come through. Yeah, we've got Melanie saying, I've really enjoyed hearing you on air. You've been amazing. Thank you so much. Oh,
thank you very much, Melanie. It's great that we can do this with you.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I actually want to talk to about while Dr. John is being connected is one of the things that I think we're going to be doing in heaven, Lindsay, is what I like to call terraforming planets.
You reckon?
Yes.
Why do you think
certain.
that? Don't you think God did a good enough job with this planet that he could do that to other planets?
Oh, he can do it. But I think it's, he said, look, I'm already done with this planet. Now it's your turn. Try and do it. Develop the technologies.
Have you seen?
It's just like the ultimate project. Like, it can take thousands of years. But we're going to have the time.
There's lots of different planets out there, and there's like photographs of all these different planets. And like there's some gas giants, and there's some little ones, and all sorts of different colors. I want a pink one. I'm picking a pink planet.
Yeah.
That'll be mine. Then I'll terraform it.
Yeah, you can terraform the pink planet.
Yeah.
I think it's just going to be amazing because there's each one will have different different chemical properties, for us to talk about. We have a message here about from Paula. Would you like to read that one?
It says, I don't believe in space travel. I believe it's an illusion, convenient with the wars going on. I can't applaud that with all the suffering going on in the Middle East. What earthly good is it doing to help? I don't want to leave Earth while I want to look after it. I feel if God wanted us to be on another planet, he would have put us there. He put us on this Earth to look after it, to be keepers and look after the Earth. I believe it's space stations. Think of the resources they use while telling us resources are becoming scarce to us. We need to look after planet Earth. Gates said he wants to block out the moon, and I believe this latest movie, Operation Hail Mary, is as movies a declaration of what they get up to behind the scene. distraction and illusion. Call me a conspiracy theorist, but with COVID, I just don't trust. I just trust discernment, not to be caught up in the grandeur of man. Fix Earth, it's broken. Interesting comment.
It's an interesting comment. Look, I respect the
I know
the
a few
sentiment
people
there.
who think that way too.
Yeah. And I think there's a little bit ironic as well that one of the things that I think it's ironic, like we are thinking about building a base in the moon, but we haven't yet figured out how to live in peace and harmony here on Earth.
Yeah.
That being said, Paula, I also see it from a different lens here, and my different lens is, you can do both end. I'll tell you one example here. For example, with missions, bringing the gospel to other countries. A lot of people said, "Hey, Joseph, why should we go to other countries to share the gospel if our own country still has people that needs to hear the gospel?" And I say, yeah, that's fair enough. But hey, why can't we do both? Why can't we do both? And I think that there is an element that I think that we are created for great things. I think that God created us to explore, to develop technologies, to put our brains to good use. I think this is God created all human beings with potentials to be engineers. I think this is part of God's creation. God says for us to subdue the earth, and I think that part of that is to understand how the earth works and to use that, but for good. So while I don't think that the problem of the world is lack of money, if we are like in a country where there's lack of money is the problem, I think that there's money enough to fix all the world's problem. The problem is how that money is allocated and distributed.
Yeah.
So I don't think that going to the space will mean that someone else will miss out on something, but I do think that we should look better into that. So anyway, I hear you, and I feel the pain there and what you're feeling. But at the same time, I think that we also need things to look up for. We need things to be inspirational and to remind us of what God has called us that we're capable of. The thing is, are we going to use that knowledge for good, or are we going to use that knowledge for evil? And I'm a big believer that we should use it for good. Now, producer Shells, are we ready to talk to Dr. John Anderson? Is he in the line with us?
So we're going to have to just get you to call him. So let's go to a really quick song, and we're going to go to a Little Sparrow Psalm, and then we'll be right back.
All right. So we're going to be listening to Matt and Josie Minikis now, and after the song, our interview with Dr. John Anderson.
Little sparrows serve God best by just simply singing the songs He placed within their breast, all about their merry winging. And little daisies serve God best by simply being daisies, lifting faces, unashamed, silent praises they are raising. In a world that tries so hard to be always someone else, God is blessed the very most when we're content to be ourselves. When you're content to be yourself.
That was Matt and Josie Minikis with Little Sparrow Psalm. You're listening to The Breakfast Show on Faith FM, and now we have the privilege to call in Dr. John Anderson. He's going to be sharing with us some facts about, can we trust the book of Genesis? Is Genesis history, or is it a book full of myths? Dr. John, thank you so much for talking to us today. Welcome to The Breakfast Show.
Thank you, Joseph. It's such a privilege for us to be on your program.
Absolutely. It's our privilege. And Dr. John, tell us a little bit about, because I've seen lots of people saying that, Genesis is a myth, particularly when it comes to the story of the worldwide flood, the ark, Noah's Ark. I have seen a lot of my friends rolling their eyes when I tell them that I believe it, and I believe that there's like real good evidence. But I'm wondering here, what evidence would you point out to that, or should we just believe it by a blind faith?
Well, look, Joseph, it really is amazing, because here we have a book, our Bible, that gives us the history of the world and also its time frame. And what it tells us is that we have a world that was created by a God, Almighty God, only a matter of thousands of years ago, and destroyed by a flood 1,500 years later. Now, of course, the secular world thinks that that's complete nonsense. As far as they're concerned, there is no God. You know, the world is just a chance happening. It evolved, and it evolved millions and billions of years ago, whereas, of course, our Bible says it's only a matter of thousands. Now, it's very, very important, really, for us at Creation Ministries, and this is what we've dedicated our ministry to do, to give people evidences that show that truly the world is only a matter of thousands of years old, and there was that event called Noah's flood. And the reason it's so important is that if you can undermine the truth of the Bible in one area, then it casts doubt on its stories in other areas. Now, we've just had Easter, and Easter gives us the story of a man called Jesus who was crucified 2,000 years ago and came to life again 3 days later. The only person who's ever done that. Now, if you can cast doubt on some parts of the Bible, you might even cast doubt on that part. And that really is the most important, because
good point.
Without what Jesus did for us, there is no forgiveness of sin and no eternal salvation. So it's very important for us, and this is what we're on about at Creation Ministries, to show people that the Bible can be trusted in its truth everywhere. Now, it's interesting because I've just come back from a coach trip in Victoria, went along the Great Ocean Road and revisited some of those really iconic structures that we have along that southern coast of Victoria, things like the London Bridge and the 12 Apostles. Now, the world thinks that they're millions and billions of years old, whereas we believe at Creation Ministries that they are layered sedimentary rock structures that were formed in Noah's flood, only a matter of thousands of years ago. Well, who's right? Well, what have we actually observed happening? What we've observed is that structures like that have been collapsing in recent years. One of the ones, the London Bridge one, that collapsed in, I think it was 1990, with some people standing on it.
Oh, wow.
Who only scrambled to safety and had to get winched off one of the other rocks by helicopter because they couldn't get back. And a few years later, one of the so-called 12 Apostles collapsed into the sea. There are only actually 7 left. So a lot of them,
really?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
There are 7 still standing, but they've all collapsed in recent times. And the most interesting thing about it, and the reason why we regard that as a demonstration of the young Earth, is that there's lots of similar structures throughout the world, and they've been collapsing in recent times as well. There are probably about a dozen that have collapsed into the sea in maybe the last 20 or 30 years. And, I mean, what a coincidence it would be if things that were millions of years old are all collapsing in the space of our lifetime. I mean, it makes much more sense that they would be only a matter of thousands of years old rather than millions of years if we can see them all collapsing.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, they have been stable there. They have endured so much for millions and millions of years, and all of a sudden all of them start to collapse.
Yeah, it would be such a coincidence. And I mean, one of the ones, Joseph, is ironic because one of them was in the Galapagos Islands and it was called Darwin's Arch. Now, as people would know, Charles Darwin got a lot of his ideas of evolution from the 5 weeks that he spent in the Galapagos Islands. And there's one of these arches there. It was called Darwin's Arch. That collapsed 2 years ago.
Bum, bum.
And,
Wow, it's a bit of
another one in Italy called Lover's Arch collapsed only about 3 or 4 weeks ago. So they're all collapsing. So really,
but couldn't people blame global warming or climate change and saying, yeah, it's because we are wrecking the planet, this is why that's happening? Would that account to be a sufficient explanation to that?
Well, look, I mean, the world can come up with any explanation that they like. And obviously, because they can't explain it any better, they'll call it global warming or climate change or something like that. But truly, these arches have been standing there for, certainly for a couple of thousand years, but the world says millions. Well, I think that the evidence shows that if they're all collapsing in the space of one person's lifetime, then the likelihood that they were actually formed in Noah's flood only a matter of thousands of years ago is much stronger than the world's explanation.
Yeah, I hear. Yeah, absolutely.
And look, the other thing that I wanted to mention this morning, Joseph, along the same lines, is I reread one of my books recently on the authenticity of the book of Genesis, and one of the things that was really astonishing to Christian missionaries is that when they went into a lot of the indigenous places, particularly in the Pacific Islands and other places like that, they discovered that the indigenous people had stories about a great worldwide flood. Now, as our Bible tells us, there were only 8 survivors, one family of that flood. And how is it possible that people who had never had any contact with the Middle East or Christian missionaries ever had stories about a similar event? And the amazing thing was, even though many of the stories were pretty garbled because they'd been handed down by word of mouth over generations, there were still so many similarities of the Bible's flood story. There were stories about a favoured family being warned and saved in a boat with animals, and also lots of stories about how birds were sent out to check how the flood was going and how the boat came to rest on a mountain. Things that, how could they have known things like that if their ancestors had not been descended from the people in the ark?
Yeah.
Now, the world doesn't have any explanation for that, but the Bible gives us one. And this is why we constantly say, when you look at the evidence, and there's plenty more anthropological evidence, you can look at genetics and you can look at languages, and you can see that the world's explanation does not hold up. The Bible's explanation is the one that will stand up to scrutiny with all the evidence that you can trot out. So really, this is our point at Creation Ministries. People can trust the Bible from the very first verse because when you look at the scientific evidence, the real evidence, not opinion, evidence, then that evidence is invariably consistent with what the Bible says. You can never say that it proves the Bible to be true. You can only say that when you look at the evidence, it is consistent with what the Bible says, and it is not consistent with what the secular world believes.
It will be fascinating because I know that some, proponents of atheism and that the Bible cannot be trustworthy, they would always dismiss the flood story as a localized flood that might have happened in the Middle East sometime. But then that would not explain how we find marine animal fossils in the top of Mount Everest, and also would not explain how we found stories about this global flood from all the way from the Pacific Islands to South America to the far corners of Africa without anybody ever telling them anything about the Bible before.
Yes, well, it all goes to show that even though those stories are somewhat garbled, that they are actually harking back to the true account, which we only find in our Bibles. And really, I think that's an amazing confirmation. Not that we actually, as Christians, need any confirmation of the Word of God, But we can point to those stories and say to people who are skeptical, when you look at the evidence is always consistent with what the Bible says.
Wow, that is really amazing. And you mentioned that some of the Pacific islands have that. So you mentioned the elements, the big picture elements that all match, like, global worldwide flood, one family that survived, boat, animals. Do we also know, like, some of the elements that, because surely some would have been lost in time in translation and because they haven't had access to the scriptures. Do we know any of the non-matching details as well, so we can have an idea of what did we find in these reports of the flood?
Well, not all the stories, of course, have the same details. Some of them emphasize the favoured family, some the birds, some coming to rest on a mountain, things like that. Mm-hmm. So really, they are garbled stories because they've been passed down by word of mouth, because these peoples didn't have written languages. They only had oral tradition. And as is pretty well known with oral tradition, as it's passed down from generation to generation, other items creep in, and
yes.
you only see that there's the basic framework there, and all the details are quite fanciful, and that's what we find with the indigenous accounts of the flood. But what we say as Christians is that the true account, which is not garbled, which makes complete sense, and which is very, very specific, is only found in our Bible.
Amazing. Dr. John, sorry, I have to interrupt because we have to move on. Our time is about to expire here. But I would just want to ask you, where can we find more information about it? What can we look for in creation.com so we can direct our listeners to?
Well, look, there is a search window at creation.com, and there are tens of thousands of articles on all sorts of things about creation versus evolution on that website, creation.com. So anybody who is interested can freely use the search window and really find anything, affirmations of anything that they're looking for on that website.
Amazing. I use that website. I think there's incredible articles. Dr. John, thank you so much for joining us today. We're looking forward to talk to you again sometime soon.
Thanks for being a part of the Faith FM family. Join our community on Facebook or get in touch at 1-800-FAITH-FM.